Ian O'Connor, who interviewed James Dolan for ESPN and ESPN.com here on the Rich Eisen Show. And him calling somebody who heckles him in the streets a drunk, the thing that really upset me about that is because it is a complete lack of customer service. It's a complete disdain for it. It is a complete disdain for any sort of contact with a fan base because he understands that he has the crown jewel in many ways of a sports franchise, and folks are going to come regardless. And the number of celebrities that I interview, Ian, who would have a problem with him and would voice it if they weren't afraid of some form of retribution to their season tickets or their front row seat, I've lost track of it. So that's part of what does he say about that when you have that conversation with him about his relationship with the fans?
Yeah, he tells me, and he's told many people this, that he really cares deeply about the fans and trying to win for them. Of course, his behavior in those instances would go cut against the grain of that thought and that sentiment. And I do think this, they've been bad for such a long time. They've won one playoff series since Jeff Van Gundy walked out of the building and quit 17 plus years ago. If the Knicks were a consistent contender, like basically his Rangers have been for the most part, I think the way people look at him and his feisty, combative nature would be different. But the fact of the matter is he's been a consistent loser in the NBA, and therefore his behavior is a big part of the narrative of why he might be considered by most New Yorkers the worst owner in a post-Donald Sterling NBA. And so his response is, I care deeply about the fans. His friends and associates say there's nobody. I talked to everyone from Wayne Gretzky to Messier to the people who work for him now at the top levels of the Rangers and the Knicks. They all say that nobody cares more about trying to win for the fans than this guy, and his resources that he provides proves that. Well, it's got to be beyond the resources, and it is the way you comport yourself. And in that context, he has been a failure without question. And so I don't think he has good answers to those questions. I think, as Messier told me a while back on the phone, the only thing that's going to change it for Jim is winning. If you don't win, nothing else is going to matter. And, of course, they've not found the right formula, or at least on the basketball side, the right executive to make that happen.
Well,
and, I don't see.
If you don't mind me just jumping in here, Ian, I mean, just like I have to – I can't believe I'm going to say this. I have to beg to differ with Mark Messier because I'm sitting out here. My kids are wearing Celtics gear because my wife's a big Boston fan. I never thought my children would ever wear that stuff. I'm from Staten Island, ever. Thought that would be in a million years. And I don't want to set foot in Madison Square Garden again, even if they do have 50, 60 win seasons because of what happened with Charles Oakley. And your conversation with him, your quote from him in this piece, Ian O'Connor here on the Rich Eisen Show, says it's quote, he was out of control. He's talking about Charles Oakley when he was dragged out of the Garden by Dolan's security at the Garden on February 8th, 2017. He was out of control. Anybody else who went even half the way that he went would have been ejected from the venue. It just got too bad. He had to be taken out, which to me was the most outrageous part of the piece, because the fact that folks went up to him to begin with is because Dolan made him, Oakley, persona non grata at the Garden and not allowed to be in there. Has he taken any responsibility at all in your conversation for it? That's an outrage, Ian. That's an outrage.
I think the bigger outrage, at least the way I look at it, is not taking accountability for the Anuka Brown-Sanders case back in the verdict was rendered back in 2007. And I think, yes, I agree with you on the Oakley front. And I said, wasn't there any way? Here's a beloved Knick in your building, okay? You've got an issue with him. How about saying, hey, Charles, come sit next to me for the second half. Afterward, we're going to go back to my office. Yeah. You and I are going to talk man to man. We're going to settle our differences, and you're going to be a part of this organization again. And just do me a favor. Let's cool down. Let's watch the rest of the game, and then we'll be in my office for as long as we need to be after this game. He couldn't do that because Oakley was too out of control. I talked to a lot of people who actually are not enemies of Dolan, who know him very well, who say that should have happened. So many people in the building say there was no way that could have happened, that Oakley was just too belligerent in that moment.
But even to walk up and just – sorry, go ahead.
The bigger case was really Brown-Sanders, because if that case unfolded today, imagine I just think it would have been covered and looked at entirely differently. Because back then it was just kind of part of the garden culture of dysfunction. Today, with the and rightfully so, the Me Too movement, I just think that would have been so much worse for Dolan, for Isaiah Thomas, for everyone in MSG if they took that to trial and lost. And I think I was looking for more contrition for what happened in that case. Instead, the answer was, we were right, the jury got it wrong. And I thought that was very disappointing that so many years have passed and he has not really taken any accountability for the hostile work environment that created that case to begin with.
Yeah, the sexual harassment suit that was filed against the Garden and Isaiah Thomas and James Dolan.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.